This is Stereoactive Presents. I'm your host, Jeremiah McVeigh, and in this episode, I'm joined once again by Charles Hinshaw to discuss the second film written and directed by Emerald Fennell. Saltburn stars Barry Keoghan, Jacob Elordi, Rosamund Pike, Richard E. Grant, Alison Oliver, and Archie Madekwe, and is distributed by Amazon MGM Studios and available on Prime. In just a moment, you'll hear my review of the film, followed by my discussion with Chuck. Since we're recording this a couple of months after the film's release, and even longer since it first began playing at festivals and reviews of it started coming out, it may be worth mentioning that there seem to be a lot of critics who do not like Saltburn. In fact, I pretty much avoided watching the film until now because so many critics I follow had so little good to say about it. So perhaps my low expectations played a part in this, but I found it mostly pretty compelling to watch. I mean, it's pure pop melodrama trash, playing at being deep and sophisticated, and I think another couple of passes on the screenplay may have leveled it up from that to either the true satire or social commentary it strives to be, something more along the lines of The Talented Mr. Ripley, The Rules of the Game, Gosford Park, A Place in the Sun, or something more recent like Parasite. But the talent and craft brought to the film from other quarters certainly elevated into something more than it would be otherwise. Barry Keoghan not only swings for the fences as the class interloper at the heart of the film, but he also more than proves his ability to lead a high-profile movie with a top-notch cast. And whether some of his choices pull you in or make you cringe, it's impossible to deny his commitment to his character and the themes of the film. For his part, between this and Sofia Coppola's Priscilla, Jacob Elordi is fast becoming an actor whose presence in a project is going to make me more interested in checking it out. That said, I do wish he had more to do at times in Saltburn, especially after his character Felix first shows Keoghan's Oliver around the estate and introduces him to the other residents, then seems to melt into the background or wholly disappear for quite some time. Richard E. Grant and Rosamund Pike as Felix's staggeringly British parents are both bright spots when the film allows them space to shine, and Archie Madekwe as Felix's cousin Farley certainly does all he can to make his character as unlikable as the script requires. Add to all that the striking visuals delivered by the cinematography and production design, and I'm honestly now more excited to see director Emerald Fennell's next film than I was after I had mixed feelings about her last one, Promising Young Woman. From this point on, we may discuss elements of the plot that some would consider spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything about the movie at this time, you may want to come back and listen to this later. So, Chuck, what were your thoughts on this movie?
I really enjoyed it. I didn't know anything about it. And I hadn't heard reviews of it, but I just remember a friend texting me and being like, I watched this trailer for Saltburn. It looks so stupid. Or something like that. And I was like, all right, I guess Saltburn's stupid. I don't know. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know Emerald Fennell was the filmmaker. I think I might have seen it sooner, because I really do enjoy her style.
Yeah.
Just
based on Promising Young Woman, you mean?
Based on Promising Young Woman, and also based on the work she did on Killing Eve.
Oh, right. I did see that
a lot of second season writing.
Okay.
Between those two projects, she's always trying to kind of mix the pop, as you sort of pointed out, the sort of pop sensibility and interest in flash and, aesthetic with like sort of larger themes, whatever they might be. I felt like this was a little bit indulgent at times.
Certainly.
In a way where it was like, okay, she believes that what she's creating means something, but I don't know that it actually does, or
Right.
just because it means it to her, it doesn't really mean that to me. But I liked how bold it was. And when I read more about it, which I don't know if that's a strength or a detriment to a movie, if, you know, the more you read about it, the more you kind of understand it. Like, should you understand a film on its own?
Yeah.
Or, is it okay if it requires a little bit of,
I mean, I think it
some,
depends. I think if
yeah,
if you read something about it and you can be like, "Oh, I see that,"
right.
rather than be like, "Pfft, what the fuck are you talking about?" Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like if it's so obscure, or oblique or whatever,
Right.
then I understand like that inclination to be like, shouldn't this have been in the text for me to
Yeah.
as I was watching it or something? But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like some of my favorite movies are those type of like 2001: A Space Odyssey. The first time I watched that movie, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" I
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
watch it
yeah.
again and figure it out and read about it. And like those are movies sometimes that are like the best. Like to
Yeah.
dig in and be like, "What was going on with this?" You know,
Right.
I'm not
Right.
saying this is that movie, but
No, no. I was thinking about 2001 as well, and maybe a more comparable Kubrick would be like Eyes Wide Shut or something,
mhm,
where you just like
true,
don't really know what's happening. And yeah, it sort of helps to read up on it, or sort of get other people's takes on it to
right,
sort of form your own understanding. But I think the thing with Saltburn is it's a blend where I watched an interview with her and I read some stuff that she had said, and there are some things where I do feel like I'm like, all right, whatever. Yeah, if you think that. But then there's other things like when she says that she considers it like a vampire movie.
mm,
Or she references like Hammer horror and that kind of thing, that I'm like, okay, I can dig that. And
yeah,
I like that idea of bringing in the cultural, you know, character study into this realm of horror and Hammer horror. And I forget what you sort of called it, trashy. And I think
yeah,
that's or like, use the term trashy as a
like
as
pop
a just
trash
yeah, yeah.
melodrama, I think is
And
what I said.
right, right. And that's what Hammer is.
Hmm.
That's what those sort of old school horror movies are.
Yeah.
And especially a lot of vampire movies are very much that way too. So I was into
Hmm.
that concept.
Well, as we're recording this, the last thing that you and I talked about was the movie Maestro for this
Right.
podcast. And in a lot of ways, I think there's some similarities where maybe you could say the weak point of this movie is also the screenplay, the same way we said that for Maestro. Like, I think the visuals are great. Like, it's so good. It's so nice to look at a movie where you can tell so much care and thought went into every piece of the frame,
Right.
and just the choice about what that frame is of like the 4:3 aspect ratio and all that.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
it just really seems like a thought out movie in that way. But I will say like this does tell I think this screenplay does the job that it set out to do. Even if
Mhm.
like I don't think, kind of like what you were saying, that it is as deep as maybe it thinks it is.
Right. Right.
But with Maestro, I don't think that movie does what that screenplay was trying to do, or I don't think that screenplay did what it was trying to do. Like
Right.
there were
Yeah.
chunks missing from that story, seemingly. Whereas
Yeah.
this has a story, it tells it, it makes
Mhm.
sense, and then it's just sort of like, do you like the story or not?
Yeah. Yeah. And it
But
takes
yeah,
these twists and that certainly Maestro doesn't into it's kind of genre defying to a certain extent, because it starts off as sort of one type
mhm,
of movie and then becomes something else.
right. I wanted to ask about the class dynamics, which are obviously central
Hmm.
to this. Like they're a
Mm.
little questionable, right? Because it's and maybe questionable isn't the right word. Maybe there's a better word for that. But it's kind of weird that it's about an upper middle class kid as a predator versus an
Mm-hmm.
upper class twits as victims. You know, it's sort of like, wait, is she saying that upper middle class people are that? Or is she saying that they're predators and that they're,
Right.
or I guess it's more about like this, a specific type of a social climber, but
I think it is. I think it gets muddy with the social commentary
yeah,
because he is lying. Spoiler.
right. Sure.
But
Sure.
like if he really was the person he claimed to be, then this really down and out, kid with these like horrendous parents and
Hmm.
kind of rags to rich whatever. And I guess he probably still is on scholarship or whatever at the college, but if he truly had this hellacious kind of upbringing that is associated with a lower economic experience, not across the board, but in many instances, it might have made more sense. But
Hmm.
once you sort of find out that he's actually escaping nothing,
Yeah.
like he has a perfectly fine existence and family, and there's like no real explanation for why he is, kind of rebelling against it. And certainly not from a perspective of like he is wanting
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah. And I think it's that
It's
lack
weird.
of explanation that makes it seem as if it's a metaphor for like upper middle
Mhm,
class people overall in a way, or a type of middle
mhm.
so that's where I get a little like squirmy about it. I'm like, what is the message of this movie? Is the
Right,
message that there is a an integrity to
right.
being a lower income, lower class person? There is
Mhm,
a certain other type of ridiculous old school integrity to be an aristocratic person, maybe, I
mhm.
guess. But if you're in the middle, you're an asshole. I don't know. Like that's where sort of like you're left to kind of think that he's a stand-in for somebody, but like, what is she saying about that? It seems like very arch and
Right.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm
Yeah, I
overthinking
don't
it
know.
too, but
No, I don't think. Well, I think the film is obviously making comments about class and in a very maybe not subtle but like minuscule way race.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely,
And
definitely race.
yeah. Uh but it's like not in your face and it's not really clear what it is. It's sort of it's like okay, this is something's being said, there's kind of a statement being made, but I think I know what it is, but it's not 100% clear. And then the film goes into these acrobatics of plot of like,
Mhm.
oh, he's actually lying, and then he's a murderer, and all this stuff that sort of almost takes away from whatever the point was,
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah, I really wish they hadn't gone down that path of he actually murdered everyone, maybe. I think it would have been a more interesting movie if those had just been occurrences around him. But like it's
Right.
also not like I didn't at least suspect that he'd killed Felix,
Hmm.
you know?
Right.
But then as they like moved on and like he seemed genuinely shook by
Hmm.
his death, I was like, maybe he didn't kill him. Maybe he's actually like mourning him and in grief.
Right.
And I think he was, but like he also did kill him, you know?
Right.
It's a very complicated thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. So I want to go to another part though. Like you
Hmm.
said that you didn't really know anything going into this. Unfortunately, I had the two like what the fuck scenes kind of like
Okay.
lightly spoiled for me, like
Hmm.
where I kind of knew what was going to happen in them because I'd heard enough that I could guess because they were talking about
Sure.
it them as being salacious. So I'm
Right.
talking about the tub scene
Right.
and
I will say I had heard there is a bathtub scene.
and so
I didn't know what that
yeah,
meant. I
okay.
just heard that there was
Yeah, it
one.
so there's the tub scene and the grave scene are the two I'm
Right.
talking about.
Sure, sure.
And the
Yeah.
grave scene got spoiled for me basically by Barry Keoghan, because I watched he did like one of those timelines of your careers or most iconic characters. I
Mm.
forget which.
That's
And
funny that he would do that.
I know some of them, they're like, these guys haven't had long careers yet. Like,
I know, I
good
know.
actor and had some good
Yeah.
parts, but like, it's funny when they do this and theirs is like 12 minutes long, and then you have some other actor and it's like it's literally a half hour. And
Right,
I
right,
don't know.
right.
Anyway, he kind of talked about, and it was interesting to know that, like, I guess he made that decision to do that on the
Yeah.
grave.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So he basically like was thinking about it and came in that day and asked Fennell, like, can we have a close set? I feel like I want to try something here. And then
Mm.
he made love to the ground.
Right, right. Which to me, when I thought that was like an example of the creative indulgence.
Yeah. Or pretentiousness. Would that be
Yeah,
another word for it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Just like, who gives a like, this is not communicating like, oh, you're so bold
Yeah.
to like get naked and have sex with the grave. Like, okay, whatever. Like, it's not, I don't know, maybe it's too many weird movies at festivals that it's like not interesting anymore. But
I guess I
you
have
know.
like a little more patience for it, knowing that it was his idea rather
Mhm.
than
That's true.
Emerald Fennell's.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Not
because
that
at
she didn't make
first,
the decision to include it in the film, but still,
right. And it's a long take
Yeah.
and it goes on and yeah. So you're not wrong in that, the first instinct is to kind of put that on her, but then to hear that it was sort of his idea is a different changes it up a little bit. Um yeah, and I guess the tub scene made more sense. I didn't,
Yeah. I thought it worked in the movie. I mean, it was
you know,
a little, cringy to watch, but like
it's gross.
in the way that I'm like, a movie should be able to go there if it earns it. And I thought
Right.
that that made sense in that moment of the movie. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like offensive or anything.
yeah, I'm sure it is to
It's
some
just,
people, but
yeah, well that's,
yeah,
they're
exactly.
they shouldn't be watching this movie if they're that
Exactly.
easily offended.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say before and I was reminded is my biggest beef I think with the movie is it feels longer than it is. At least it did for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always reminded of this thing that Tom Cruise, of all people, said, where he's like, "It's not how long it is; it's how long it feels."
Yeah.
And he probably didn't invent that, but that's where I heard it, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Oh, that's so true." And I feel like, yes, this movie is only, it's only like 2 hours and 11 minutes. It's not a particularly long movie, but I just happened to pause it at one point and I was like, Jesus, there's 40 minutes left in this thing.
I know.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I was,
Yeah. When we watched it, we got 2/3 through it and paused it
mhm,
because it was getting late. And we were like, we need to
yeah,
go to bed because we have a child and have to get up at a certain hour in the
right,
morning.
right.
And we're like, oh my God, there's still like 50 minutes left or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Not 50, but it seemed like a lot.
Right. Well, you think it's kind of going to wrap up and in a weird way, it actually speeds up. Like
Yeah.
once they get past the death of Felix and there's this sort of sense that he's on this mission.
Mm-hmm.
It almost like clips along of him taking care of the rest of the family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like checking boxes rather than telling
Right.
stories.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. It's not how long it is, it's how long it feels. Like, I mean, to
Mhm.
me, maybe another way of like inverting that is like, how long does it feel like this movie should have been? And to me,
Right.
like, I think if this movie had been like an hour 45, I think that
Mhm.
would have been like hour 45, hour 50. Like, I think if they'd cut out that much, it would have like tightened it up and made it like lost some of that stuff that felt a little like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that if it didn't try as hard to be like smart art
Yeah.
stuff, like lean into the hammer thing, lean into the horror thing, let it be trashy, let it be simple.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try and sort of over complicate it. That would be my sort of
Yeah, I agree.
advice, to my unwanted advice to the Academy Award winning screenwriter.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
Yeah, but I'll just go back to saying that I did think it looked great.
Yeah, it did look great. It looked great. The acting's really good. I really like the score and the music choices in general.
I gotta say, I don't remember the score. I remember the needle drops.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean it's pretty like interwoven,
yeah,
because there are quite a few needle drops in
yeah,
there.
lots of like, remember 2006.
Right. And that was the other thing that she spoke about quite a bit in the interview that I saw of her, was like, this was a period piece because 2006 was so long ago, and I didn't totally buy it. Like in the sense that it mattered.
Right.
That, somehow the sort of setting of 2006 was really specific and necessary to the larger point. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't really think it mattered.
I don't know. I mean, I always wonder with a movie like this, especially when it's about like British class stuff,
Mm-hmm.
if that would be more meaningful if we were from there
Oh, I don't know.
and
Maybe.
had the same references and like culturally
Right.
and
Right.
historically there for us, But I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe that's giving too much.
I just know that she in that interview, she's like, he's wearing a Live Strong bracelet. Very
I didn't even notice that, but sure.
significant to 2006. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that was like people wore that shit for years.
Yeah.
But okay. But again, I think, I would rather have I do think I would rather have a filmmaker who is, well, I don't know. She said this thing and it really made me think, like, I don't know, Emerald, where she's like, you see the film. It was an anatomy of a scene thing so she's like picking apart the scene, and she's like, you see the set dressing and you see the Diet Coke can, and she's like, what's the point of making a movie if you don't care whether it's Diet Coke or Dr. Pepper or something, like, sort of suggesting that, if you're gonna make a movie, you should give a shit about all these little things. Um, I don't know if I mean that's certainly something we hold in high regard when filmmakers are that like nitpicky, especially when it works, like a Kubrick or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Ridley Scott or something. But I'm just like, who cares? Part of me was just like, maybe you're overthinking this whole thing too much, and
Yeah, I
maybe
don't know.
there's
I'll give her that one though. Like I feel like that is a director's job sometimes, is to like
sure.
overthink it and
Mm-hmm.
make it all make sense in your head. It doesn't really matter if that connects to the audience. There was
Right.
something in that detail that hopefully helped you tell your story, and I got the story even if I didn't get the detail. You
Yeah.
know,
Sure.
it's
That's what
maybe
you'd
maybe
hope.
you wouldn't have been able to tell the story the same way if you hadn't been thinking about the fucking Coke can or whatever.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know.
I think it sort of speaks to, there's an element of the movie where perhaps, as we've sort of spoken about, there are levels of kind of indulgence and perhaps pretentiousness that
Hmm.
maybe got in the way of the story.
Sure.
And when I hear her talk like that, it makes me think, oh, that's probably true.
Could be. Could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I think I'm more interested in what she's gonna do next than I was
Oh, yeah.
before. So there is
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, for
Any
sure.
final thoughts?
No, I mean, I really do like her, and I like her vibe. I like that she's dark. I like that she goes dark. And both Promising Young Woman and this took me places I was not expecting to go,
Hmm.
which I think is also a really strong quality to have as a writer, because most things you kind of see where they're headed.
Right.
And I also think it's the sort of odd, weird art movie of its time. It does make me think of, kind of bold cinema, from the 70s or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think people should definitely check it out. And yeah, I'm also interested to see what she's doing next.
Okay. Well, thank you
Mhm.
very much, Chuck.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to Stereoactive Presents, and thank you to our guest, Charles Henshaw. The music in this podcast is composed by Hansdale Sue. My name is Jeremiah Lee McVeigh. If you like what you hear in the show, please rate and review it in Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that allows that. Doing so helps us to expand our audience, and it's much appreciated. And please follow us wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. Every little bit helps, and like I said, it is truly appreciated. You can also get in touch with us at stereoactivemedia@gmail.com, and you can find more information about this show and everything else that Stereoactive Media is involved with at stereoactivemedia.com. This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.